running full speed, but the markets are faster. Quasar Markets Live brings the world's top financial minds to you. Everything you need to know in one place. Learn from elite educators and gain a competitive edge, leveling the playing field for you. Join the conversation. Quasar Markets Live.
Good morning, Quasar Markets Live. Good morning, BigBeat. Looking skinny, my man. Looking good. Love to see it.
How are you, Howard? You know, I think over the weekend we saw a few pieces of bad news, right? Los Angeles situation going on. And I think that you're seeing a little bit of what we've been talking about, the mergers and acquisitions and the look at the metals markets. The world doesn't seem happy again. Here we are again, and you know, I can't put my finger on it. And I think you're going to see a very light trading week this week.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, definitely a little unease. I'd say the markets are actually digesting news pretty well. I mean, like you said, I mean, there is a little bit of flight of safety. The metal markets are moving up. The crypto markets are moving up, but you know, stocks are holding up pretty well. And like you said, merger and acquisitions. And I've got to ask a question because I'm going to put it into the same stage.
Yeah.
Is splitting Warner Brothers into two, which you and I talked about, you know, is that is merger and acquisition to me, right?
Totally
this
is,
is the growing of a new company. I just wanted to make sure I was on the right boat there.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. We talked about WBD last week, right, on the show, and I said, look, something's up there. How do I know that? Well, A, I was using Quasar Markets, but B, you saw the options markets moving, right? You saw things that just weren't normal trading, and I'm like, gosh, something's weird here at Warner Brothers. Why are the options for next week so high? You know, these they're giving you the answers, right? The question is, can you extract that answer and make a deal out of that, right? And yes, because they're going to need money in order to make this breakup. They're going to have to figure it out because CNN, TNT, and Discovery is not quite just a streaming, right? HBO, DC, Warner Brothers, those are all streaming, and especially when you use DC, you're talking about like Disney did, right, with Marvel and with Star Wars. You're seeing the same thing with Warner Brothers, right? The DC comics, things like that. Warner Brothers themselves, you've got comics themselves, and then of course HBO being the movies company. Boom, there you go. And I agree with this. This is great. Get rid of the albatrosses around the neck of WBD and make it two companies, and let the consumer, in this case, the investor, decide which company they're more interested in. But for me right now, I agree with it. I love the HBO, DC, Warner Brothers side of things. So I actually I like this move a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, you definitely called it. You know, they're doubling down on their high growth streaming, you know, and intellectual property side while insulating it from the legacy network drag. You know, one side, I think we both agree, is sort of the albatross, and one side is where the growth and the future probably lie, right? But investors will make those decisions themselves, as you talked about. There, Steve, another one that sort of follows along with that is, I don't know if you saw, Conagra sold off their fish companies, basically, Mrs. Paul's, Vanderkamp's, to Highliner Food, a U.S.-based company. Pretty big deal when it comes to that part of the world. I mean, those are basically the two biggest names when it comes to frozen fish, right?
And we once again talk about from the food side of things, and this one I will rely on you because you're in that world. But frozen food is really taking a beating lately. You know, with weight loss drugs. We talk about this forever. Weight loss drugs. The world's changing in what people are actually buying and how they're eating. They're eating more fresh food, and fish right now is a big one, but I would say Mrs. Paul's and Vanderkamp's brands, two of the brands I don't necessarily even eat. I haven't eaten in years. I don't even know how. I don't even.
Well, you live in Florida is a big part of that on the shore, and before that, you lived in DC and New York. You know, I'm with you in general. Growing up in New England, it's not something that I get a lot. I eat a lot of. But what it is they're the major players, and when it comes to like you're saying, what this does, it means Highliner Foods when they walk in and talk to Albertson, when they walk in and talk to Kroger and those companies, they're walking in as the market leader now, which is the opposite of what they've done in the past.
Right.
So that's the part. It strengthens their presence in the U.S. frozen seafood retail markets. It adds portfolio diversification to them with established consumer recognized brands. I think it's a good move for them, and I think it's a good move for Conagra. I think it's a good move for both, frankly, from it. Sticking sort of in the same area, so to speak. Steve, I'll tell you one you did miss. Circle, baby.
Yeah.
Circle, circle, circle.
And it tells you that stable coins are working, right? I mean, it's just is what it is.
And the access. I this is where I'd be selling. Now, again,
Okay.
I made it clear. I liked it, but I liked it at this thing launched at 27, 28. It's now at 127. Take some profits here. I was in it. I've already exited. I'm going to take my money and run. And look at the next one that comes along, because now we are at the stages of gravity has to come back into play. And I liked it as, if you remember, we talked about it as $6 billion company, now $23.5 billion company. Not as big a fan at 23.5, but what a move it did there. Another one, Steve, I have to say that I got right. Applied Digital, right?
Yeah.
You said, does it matter if someone partners with NVIDIA? I guess it does. I guess it does. Now, again, I'd be looking to take profits here on this nice double day move up. But these are the ones, that just have momentum. On the other side of that, man, EchoStar, SATS.
Goodbye.
Chapter 11.
I was in Best Buy over the weekend. We were looking at Apple Watches. Catherine's battery was going out, and I saw a Starlink, like a little area just to show you what the Starlink looks like, and you can have one in your backpack. It's over for EchoStar, right? Starlink has won, and they're going to continue to grow. I think, where you can have in the middle of nowhere internet, right? And they're going to put this in, it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and it'll be in your phone. It is for a lot of people, but I mean actual satellite phone in everybody's phone. I would also, there's a lot of companies like that do satellite phones in the past that I have liked, especially for those people who were traveling, or oil companies that need it out in the middle of nowhere, and the oil rigs. This is definitely a game changer with Starlink. You're seeing that everywhere. I just saw, I was on a cruise and Starlink was there. They didn't pick EchoStar, right? So this is it.
Now, but do you worry? I mean, I was going to get into it sooner than later. Is this right here? Whoops.
Yes.
Does this affect that a little bit? Because I'm with you. Starlink has moved far and away into what I would have said a sizable moat over the other companies. We have a very, sort of vindictive, I think is a safe word to use when it comes to our presidential administration.
Yeah, he told you that when he was in the campaign. He said, look, I will be looking to do those things. And the minute that the two of them had a falling out. Now, I posted, we had a podcast that I did on Thursday and Friday talking about the bromance, right? And we talked about it here on the show. Yes, it affects it a lot. Will Elon Musk be around longer than Donald Trump? The answer is yes. But for the next 3 years, it's going to be tough. And I argued over the weekend. It's actually not 3 more years, right? The campaign pretty much puts everything into perspective. By that point, Trump will be a lame duck. Vance, I don't think will get elected. Maybe things will change in a couple of years. But he really is now down to about 1.5 2 years now, because the campaigns really get started. And this year this time around will be a massive primaries. And we'll be fighting and beating the crap out of each other. So, yes and no. Kathy Woods is right. I think that the shares of Tesla will continue to move higher. And Elon Musk will get back to what Elon Musk does, is the salesperson, right? He's not a builder. And I do like this. And I do like what Starlink has done. And I give big props to them for getting the satellites up in the air. The question mark now around Starlink is the same. If there is a problem with Trump and Elon Musk, will they still be using SpaceX? Or I have noticed that the new budget coming out really downgrades SpaceX and really goes back to NASA. Now, I've said this a couple of times. I like this a lot, that we get back in NASA and not doing, external third-party products.
You're like leading me, and I'm going to tell you, Steve and I did not even have time to speak this morning. So, like, it shows you how in sync we look at things. Because who's taking off today? Rocket Labs.
Yeah.
And who's announced an 8-launch deal, third mission in 24 days, coming June 10th? Rocket Labs.
Yeah.
So, it's like you said, I do think in the short term, there's definitely going to be hiccups. I definitely think there's ways to trade this, to take a look at it, to see what's going on there. But, and this is, and I just wanted to point out some of these, because this is what I mean, where you asked about, is the market malaise there? I don't know. There's a lot of excitement around new stuff. Again, I'll point to another one, eToro.
Yeah.
eToro just launched again, not a platform that I've ever used. I wasn't so positive on that one, to be honest with you. But man, it's had a nice run already, and it just started getting all the big boys looking at it, and they like what they're seeing, which is all that matters. It doesn't matter what I think; it matters what the big boys. And this is up 12.5% in the last 2 days. So,
eToro, Webull, you name the companies out there that are not Robinhood, and I love it. It's giving people more choices to trade and to also invest. Again, when you look at Needham and Jeffries and Mizuho, right, they understand the market. They understand the world is changing. And I've heard this. I was just, like I said, I was in Japan back in February, March, that we need to go where the people are, right? And people aren't going to the JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs right now. They're not starting out right. They're starting out with handhelds. How do I want to buy, I want to invest in, but they're not keeping it, right? I've heard this several times. They're not keeping their stock. So that trading revenue, while you're not paying for it, it's free trading. It's not free, by the way. Wow. You are the product. But they want to know what you're trading. And when you have a free account, it's because you are the product, right? And they want to know, and they're buying that data off of well, in this case, eToro, and Robinhood's getting paid by several companies as well.
Citadel being
one of them, and there's like 4 companies. That's called Trade Flow or Order Flow. Yes, and I love it. But it also gets people into it, and if they learn to invest and not just trade, they can't hold more than 5 seconds. That's a problem. I mean, I think a lot of people that they don't realize that trading is great, and I trade every single day, but I didn't make my money by just trading. I made my money by Tesla holding it for a couple of days. I held on to NVIDIA until it came back and we made money, right? You need to be able to learn to invest. And if these companies do that and flip it over a little bit, you see that now with Robinhood saying, look, we'll let you borrow the gold accounts or whatever, but you need to start investing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually think that they've done a pretty good job from Coinbase to Robinhood to those to offering it. Now, I don't know if anyone's taking advantage of it, but they've got all the IRA stuff, very easy. Click in, get an advantage for starting an IRA or a 401k with us, or flipping your 401k to ours. So they are doing their part there. So I do think that is good to see.
Yeah. Real quickly, Trump is expected to speak to Netanyahu today in Israel. So there seems to be a little bit more concern over there in the Israel-Gaza strip there. But this is good, I think. Some talking going on again.
You mentioned Robinhood. I'll tell you, again, any kind of significant pullback here, I would be interested. They're getting hit here because they are, well passed up, but so was everybody else. They didn't make a move in the S&P, and it's given them a pullback. Now, I'd like to see a much more significant pullback here, but if they do, I'd be interested. I do think that they're a winner when it comes to trading. They unfortunately do, as you said, make it so easy. And there are so many of the younger kids. It's what they know. It's what they love. They think that Vlad's the man, and they think that app is the way to go. It's not where I do my trading. But, again, that's a generation that is moving into trading in a bigger and bigger way. And whether they lose money or make money, we want them to make money. The bottom line is they pay fees one way or the other, and it's good for Robinhood.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of the run up over the last few days is exactly what you just wrote here, is because they're not including the S&P index. A lot of them thought that it would be included in the S&P. Let me put this in perspective. They will be included in the S&P 500.
That was mine. Coinbase, and I'm doing this based on past history. Again, it's not, doesn't mean the next thing happens again, but those that were watching Coinbase in March did not make it, got hit 5-6%, and then, got into it the next time, went up 10, 15, 20%. So I'm going to say that I think Robinhood will do a similar type take there and do another one that you and I have not been a huge fan of that has the same thing going on. AppLovin. Again, if you liked AppLovin, if you thought it was going to get in and it didn't, again, look for a pullback. These are some of the times where, as you're saying, you invest for a little bit longer, for about a quarter. 3 months is all you're sort of looking at here till they make that decision again. And if you are correct, these will move up significantly on that news.
They will. I like AppLovin, what they're building and what they're doing with their apps. But I'm not. I would not invest in companies based on whether or not they're going to be included in the S&P 500. It's a great addition to it, because that means that ETFs and all that has to buy in order to keep, to make it work. But that's not a good investing strategy, by the way. That's a terrible investing strategy, because you're literally living on whether or not that Standard & Poor's, the company itself, will put them in their 500 and kicks big. And when there's a winner, there's a loser, right? So that means somebody has to come out in order to make that happen. Now, if you don't know, there's not exactly 500 companies. It's 50. I think it's 508 right now. It could be 506 depending on, and they don't even have to make it at 500. They can make it under 500. So that's a terrible investing strategy. But I like if the people around it feel the company is good enough to be included in the S&P 500, that tells me everything. So if you think that if you bought it because you thought they were good to be S&P 500, then you shouldn't sell it, right? That means you really believe it. If you're just buying it because you're hoping and praying and doing all that things I don't believe in when it comes to markets, then you're making a big mistake. But if you're doing it because you believe in the company and they're good enough to be in the S&P 500 or the Russell or whatever these different big indices are, then I agree with it. Then okay, but and I agree with AppLovin. I like AppLovin a lot, by the way.
Nice. Trade talks, haven't heard any much from it so far, but they're there. They're talking. They're in London. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah. I've got a friend right now in Geneva. They're working on this right now on the tariffs. They're working on the rare earth thing. China is backing off a bit. I was just talking to her a few minutes ago. Geneva, Switzerland is there's a lot of people there right now, right? Will things get done? The answer is I don't know. We haven't seen things get done, and we're now seeing companies backing off a bit. So, I hope that they sit down, cooler heads prevail, tariffs come up, and the markets will take off again. And I think a lot of people that are in the markets right now are thinking that's the case. But right now, if we don't get things done, the focus will turn back to different geopolitical issues, including one right now in LA. With Google and Waymo. Right now, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing where organizations of countries are coming together and saying, yes, Japan just told you on Friday and a little bit yesterday that we will not have a tariff trade deal, quote, anything done before the G7. Now, the G7 is becoming, and as most people know here, I've actually worked on the G7 and the Summit of the 8 when we included Russia back in the day. Those things don't normally get done at the meeting, but things become things unthaw, shall we say, if there are tensions. And if there are things that are good, then they're all patting themselves in the back, right? But usually the communique, what the big document at the end of it, is what we have to kind of look at. So I don't care about the day-to-days with the G7, or in this case, the trade talks in London and Geneva. I do care about what the communique is going to say. So I think we need to break that communique down at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, you would hope. You hope that we find something out and it
Yeah,
works,
we'll see.
moving to the right way. We will definitely see. We're about 10 minutes from the open so far. Advanced declines moved up nicely throughout the day. It actually opened at a negative, and now it's up about 2,200. Tick's pretty flat so far. DXY, the Dixie, has regained 99 handle here. So a little bit of strength coming in. We'll see if this continues through the cash market open.
Great. Yep. Looking at the 10-year now, 4.51%. It's still steady here, but the bond market could tell us a lot today if we see a slippage. I will say the gold silver ratio we've been talking about. I had Peter on Friday, 91-19 now. So my eye is still on that gold to silver ratio. Silver pushing up here again, 36.30. I still think it's going to go up, Howard.
Nice. Yep. Silver's been strong. You've been calling for it to make that move. We will see if it can follow. So far, most of the sectors, we're seeing about 10 out of the 12 sectors getting ready on the S&P to open on the green. It looks like the only two that are laggards are consumer staples, down 5 basis points. XLY, which is consumer discretionary, down about 8 basis points. So it does look like the market wants to start opening. We'll see if profit taking kicks in or what we've got. Steve, not a ton of economic data this week.
No, it's quiet.
There you go. Here's your list. You got wholesale inventories today, NFIB small business tomorrow, CPI on Wednesday, and the budget balance. Jobless claims on Thursday, and Michigan CSI on Friday. Yeah, anything you're looking at there?
Yes. I will tell you that I am looking at Michigan consumer sentiment. I will tell you that I just filled out the paperwork for Atlanta Fed on their business thoughts there. One of the things that they've asked in this last questionnaire was about cost of training new employees and hiring, right? Are you hiring right now? If you are, what's the cost of hiring? What's the cost of replacement of people? They're very concerned that job losses will cost them more in the future for companies because training costs, right? And those companies. Now, if that's the case, companies, HR companies, the third-party HR companies might do very, very well in this time frame. But that was the question that I was asked. It was like, and I say asked, it was like 10 questions. It was a lot. So they are the Atlanta Fed, which does the bigger overall feel of the markets. They're very interested in cost to replace. What it costs to hire them, what it costs to train them, and the length of training. That was a very interesting question. How long does it take to put a new person in place that can be trained up to the level of which they want? And the number that I put in was 4 months. I think it takes 4 months for somebody to be replaced. It's not easy to replace people. You shouldn't do that if you can help that, right? Clean tensions up and have those conversations. But if that person needs to be fired or financial reasons on the company, then it's a different situation. So I said 4 months.
Nice. One of the biggest gainers so far today, MTSR, up about 21.8%, Steve, which brings me to something you know about, the weight loss drugs, and the talk all on the news and why this is moving up so far is that weight loss 2.0 is here. Amylins. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, very good question. And I'm going to start. I will phrase it with this. CVS has done a very bad thing with my insurance. They're telling me that I can't use the same weight loss drug I'm on. You can see how much I've lost. They're moving me off because they're trying to save money, put me on another one that I don't need to be on with more side effects. You're seeing that, right? A drug with way more side effects for money, right? And I that's one of the biggest problems.
It's because they have a connection to that company and a kickback, right?
That's correct. And now that's GLP-2, and of course, Amylins is using GLP-1s. But the question mark is around side effects, and the side effects that happen in all these weight loss drugs, they're pretty high. I can go through them. Probably not good to go lie with those side effects.
Yeah, let's not. Those commercials, as it is, make me scared. So yeah,
but I will tell you that one of the biggest side effects that some of the companies is the drugs make you lose muscle. And in this
Yeah.
case, amylin is saying, okay, it won't affect your muscle mass. It's not always muscle mass. It's always there's fat around the muscle, so it's going after all of them. What it does do, these weight loss drugs, is make you not want to eat as much. If you remember that weight loss drugs back in the day, that was the whole idea, was to make you feel full. It didn't really work because it was just around your stomach. Now the weight loss drugs, I said this, it's going to come down to a pill. What company out there can make it to a pill where everybody takes it, not just people that are overweight, which is 65% of Americans right now, and around the world it's still like 54% or overweight. It's a high number, but a pill. And the leading company with that right now is Eli Lilly. They should have that very shortly. That's why Novo Nordisk is doing what they're doing. But when you move forward with these weight loss drugs, it won't be just one or two people on the weight loss drugs. It's also affecting heart rates. My heart rate is down because all the things around it. Right? Cancer is down. You name it. It's really affecting all of those things, and it'll be a more healthy society. So weight loss drugs, any company right now, are doing very well. Now, Hims and Hers pivoted away from it because they lost some battles, right? But right now, any company going after these things. When I look at biotech companies, the two big things I look at is, number one, is it correcting a massive problem, cancer or heart disease or whatever? And the second one is, do they have a pipeline in order to make the drug happen, right? In other words, can they produce it? Can they reproduce it? Do they already have sales pipelines? Do they have connections with doctors? Those are the two main things in biotech. And by the way, we will very shortly have biotech stocks. Actually, this week, you'll have the new FDA calendar. You'll have the new FDA everything. So other companies that are building their whole business around FDA, guess what? We already have it, and it should be in there. And it's in the AI, folks. We'll talk about that too as well, which is really, really, really cool. For $15 a month, pretty cheap in order to have all of that data.
Absolutely. Yeah, and all news will be on that June 22nd ADA data for Novo's, Cadre Sema, like you said, and Lilly's Alorlatintide, something, too many letters.
Yeah, so that's their new one. It's coming out. Yep. What's really cool is it's a faster acting drug, and you don't need as much of it. In the Eli Lilly version,
the whole thing was it allows less frequent dosing monthly, and that's where MTSR really comes in there. Same thing. So we'll see June 22nd, June 25th will be the key spot, and for MTSR, it's their MET 233I.
Correct.
So and when we talk about this, the estimation is $100 billion market for amylins. $100 billion market.
I would even up that number, to be honest with you, because quite frankly, as these insurance companies are literally stepping in and saying, we're not paying for this, that's the dumbest thing ever, because you're hurting yourself on the back end. Everything about me has come down, right? All these numbers. And listen, that because of that, you're going to live longer, healthier, less trips to the doctor. There's all kinds of things going around this, right? I think they're making a big mistake. I get it right now. The insurance companies are not doing very well right now. Just ask UNH. But they're coming back, right? And I think that they're going to have a huge cash pile. They'll be able to do these things again and be able to fix more bigger problems. So I wouldn't do it right now. Tesla slipping here about 284.32. I'm getting interested in Tesla again here. Oof. Here we go. We're open now.
Yeah, cash market is open. Tick is slightly up. Advanced decline has jumped to almost 3,300 here. First moves it to the upside. It looks like Q's pretty flat actually so far, but first move is looking pretty good so far. Tick again still slightly up. Dow Jones opened up 4 basis points. SPY opened up 9 basis points. Q's up about 3 or 4. And the RUT up almost to 80 basis points. So small caps, the winner here. So folks feeling like maybe the Fed's going to cut, maybe something's going to move there, make these interest rates more attractive. I know Steve's got to run here. We got Mr. Flanagan coming on a little early here to jump in with me. Steve, have a great day. We will catch you on the backside. So yeah, as we get into the open here, I'm going to bring up my screen for everybody to see you're looking at what I'm looking at. Here we go. Let's go to something that looks more like that. Now let's get the bigger screen on. There we go. That gives us a bit of bigger screen. I like that. Take that headline off, and there we go. So as we watch it here, Q's right now battling to stay above 530. We've got some room to run till about that 538 area, 539 on any kind of strength here, breakaway. Watching Bitcoin, same thing. Any break above 108, it tried to get above it, stalled out just below 108. A break of 108, I do think, brings us back towards 110 here at least. Would cause a squeeze to the upside. So am looking for that across the crypto markets here this morning, but we'll see what's happening. Want to get a quick look here at IBIT, see what's happening across the ETFs, see if we see some immediate profit taking here. A little bit of profit taking right off the bat. Not too surprising again. This traded at 101K for Bitcoin just back on Thursday. A little bit of profit taking, not too much here, to be honest with you. Not too bad. Let's see, levels off. You can get a better view here. We did see since about 9 o'clock a move to the downside, bottomed out here at the 61, right about the cash open. So far, algos and retail here trying to move it back to the upside. We love to see that. I do think we have opportunity there. See what we're getting here across the spiders. So across the spider funds, we've seen a definite move from the highs we saw earlier this morning. And we do see we're definitely fading across here. Ticks now negative 263. Advanced declines lost about half of them so far. So we do see a pullback here. Ron, good morning, my friend. Hope you're having a good start to your day, buddy. How's everything going today? Gold still holding above 33, but we've seen this pullback across gold here, since Thursday. That's sort of been kicking in. We'll say I had noticed this morning too. A lot of the Chinese names have shot up here today. And you can see some of them. Alibaba up almost a full percentage point. Baidu up 2.12%. JD was another one I saw that was up significantly this morning, 2.13%. Neo up almost a full percentage point. So when they tend to go up altogether, I tend to start to think that maybe it's a good time to look to short some of those names. So, keep an eye. Yeah, it's definitely been a chaotic morning here, Ron, without a doubt. A lot of news, definitely traders, what you want to be, watching things closely, have your stop losses in place or your trailing stops, however you like to trade it, because, we're seeing things make big swings here today. Tesla now 283. Wow. Steve was mentioning he liked it here when it made that drop down here. I don't know. I am normally the man that says don't fade the Musk, but I'm also not jumping on his bandwagon right now. I don't know there. Netflix down too, about 1.21%. Nvidia starting to march back up 143.84 here. So again, Nvidia starting to march back up here. Just broke above the highs we saw last week. So Nvidia could try to run here. She's still below 530 here, so we have stalled out a bit. Berkshire Hathaway still dropping also. Wow. 192.23. Coinbase up nicely today, about 1.15. Most of the crypto stocks were mooning earlier this morning. Still pretty good. MSTR up, trying to battle above 380 again. Coinbase back above the 250 level. So looking pretty good, pretty green here. Galaxy Digital, one I've been pointing out, I like. Mike Novogratz's company has been just nicely continuing to march up here now at 27.40. Yeah, I'm a big fan. They are now down rather 1%. It was up nicely in the pre-market, so definitely seeing some profit taken across BitDeer here. Almost all the chip names outside of AVGO to the upside here. Big winner AMD here this morning, up 3.56% so far. Paul Frederick, yeah, you nailed the training. So important. So important. There. Mr. Flanagan, yes. Chaos equals opportunity. Yeah, volatility is definitely back. I can tell you on the crypto side, we've been making a ton of trades because of volatility is there. Yeah, training is absolutely time and effort. Time and effort. Not to mention, right, your IP, everything that goes into it. And yeah, all the metals were jumping up earlier. I'm not sure that they still are here. Paul, we can take a quick look. Yeah, still now pulling back a little bit here, but they have been moving up. This is obviously on the talks that China is going to allow those rare metals to continue moving. I'll see here on the mag. Wow. Tesla's still pulling back. Tick still negative 100. Advanced decline has sort of leveled out after bottoming out, down around the 1450 level, back up at 1664. So we do see that starting to move back up. But again, Dow Jones now down about 15 basis points, and it is starting to slide. Tried to make a bounce. Bounces aren't playing through so far. So if you are a buy the dip person here, I'd just be careful. He's trying to make a run back up here from that bottom at 529. So we are seeing a little bit of movement to the upside. Keep an eye on Bitcoin here, 107.5. So still strong. Like I said, it's going to make a move above 108 to see some liquidations kick in, but nicely broke through the resistance liquidity zone we were trading here. You can see the spots where we've shorted and gone long in my room. Ethereum 2530 really pulled back this morning before getting a little bit of a bounce. So we're definitely seeing Ethereum, if I had to guess there, we looked at IBITS or BlackRock's Ethereum fund. Yeah, see the sell-off on grayscales. A little bit more support kicking back in here on BlackRock's Ethereum Trust. So after the early sell-off, we are seeing a little bit of a move back up. So again, most crypto was in the green. We're seeing a little bit of negative things come in. Ripple's down. Ripple was dropping. Was definitely a laggard. When I was looking to maybe short it here, you can see when I was looking, never got up to the zone. I was looking to see if it could get a break towards up to 229. Was looking to short it from that spot. Never quite made it for me. Interesting to see if Solana can use this 50 MA on the hourly and the 200 below to support like it did the other day for a nice ride up. Could be one to look for a bounce up play here on the crypto side. Nice decline. Tick still negative here, but we have bounced back into the green across the SPYs and the Qs. RUT has lost about half of its gains here this morning. You can see was up as high as 21.51 before, now dropping back down about 10 points to 21.41. So a little bit of a sell on that spike up here. Gold nicely holding above that 3,300 so far. Silver, as Steve mentioned, definitely showing breakaway tendencies here. 36.37 now. So as Steve said, he's been a fan and was watching the gold to silver ratio. And as he and Peter Thomas talked about on Friday, might be a good time to cycle into some silver, they felt. They definitely nailed that one. Take a look at the pre-market pumper, see if anything's really pulling back significantly. BitDeer really the one that was. It was up, like I said, trading at 1478 or so here earlier this morning. Opened the cash market at 1450, now down at 1395. So definite sell-off there. And you've seen it across the crypto miners. Riot that was up nicely now, not up nearly as much. Circle that we were talking about here is pulling back pretty significant. Like I said, I sold in the pre-market here. They do have options available. It's one I will definitely look to short. See how this plays out this morning, but definitely one I'd be looking at short. Like I said, I love this company as a $6 billion company. Not as huge a fan here at 23.75 billion market cap. Just not sure that's where it should be. A mixed bag across financials. JP Morgan down about a 0.25 percentage point. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs all moving to the upside. Most of the early morning laggards still down. EchoStar has made a nice pop back up there. This is what we tend to see with these companies that declare bankruptcy is retail likes to buy it up thinking that there's, a big move to the upside. Not sure I like that idea. Working so far for them, though. Again, if they bought at 10, it's had a 50% move to the upside. Another one down significantly we talked about last week, SharpLink, another new company, SPAC, that opened up that basically is a crypto-based company that works on Ethereum stuff. And again, this is why I'm looking at a short circle. Look at that move up. It opened or closed its first day somewhere in the range of $35 a share, shot up to 123, now pulling right back down to that 33. So it could give you a little bit of an indication what you might see on circle here. You know, circle at low of the day, 125 or so. Holding up at 125. Maybe not. Holding up so far. It's still moving down, although advanced decline holding pretty steady at that 1600 level so far. And again, we now see the Dow Jones SPY and Q back on the downside. Right up still about 40 basis points. Not seeing much of a move on the VIX today, 1738. So again, I tend to like it here if it comes back down towards that $17 level as a spot to pick some up, usually on a shorted term frame naked call. So we'll keep an eye there. Something I might look at here. Bitcoin holding up at 107,420 here. So it did pull back, but it is holding up pretty decently so far. We are seeing on the other side of that EchoStar ASTS Space Mobile here up about 12% here today. So we are seeing some winners kick in. I do see my man Steve Flanagan's in the room ready to talk everything currency. Let me get him in here. How are we doing, Mr. Flanagan?
Very good, Howard. Hope you had a good weekend. And to the viewers, wow, chaos has been mentioned. Yep. But a lot of divergence on all of the technicals, on all the charts that I'm looking at in the currency markets. So, you know, I always say to the trading room, when it gets quiet and things suddenly stop and nothing guess what? That's the time to pay the most attention to the markets because it's getting ready to make its move.
Okay, well, let's start right in with our DXY here, back above 99.
That's right.
Held your level that you gave me a week or so ago at that 98.24 really well.
Yeah, 99. Where are we right now? 15 level. Just get my currencies up. But I believe we're, you know, at the point where we're seeing some divergence. It's held last week's close, 99.20. But look at this pattern. The week before, 99.44, and the week before that, 99.10. I mean, from if we're going to use technicals as part of the analysis to support up here the trading idea, a cluster of closes, but we can actually go right back into April on the April 2nd announcement. We've got such a cluster of closes between 99 and 101 that you must dissect this and look for a pattern. So right now, at around the 99.15 level, you know, I think that this is a significant point. If we get much above 99.20, let's take it one step at a time. That's the first signal. The ultimate signal here is around the 99.50. And once we see that, you know, successive closes, and we look back to last Friday, remember, because everything uses the closes in currencies, because Friday at 5 p.m., everything ceases. So all your big, giant technical models can all home in on this type of close level. And that's why I emphasize that to the viewers. A Friday close is significant from the bigger position keepers. Money moves first. $7.5 trillion trades in one day in the currency market. That's why it's important to watch these closes so carefully. So with all the confusion and uncertainties in the market, we've got China and the US now meeting in London. Do they make an agreement? I'm not so sure, but I'm kind of thinking if I have a date, I'm going to put the date on the mark. It's going to be what, July 9th? I think that's the day where all of the pauses. So we're getting closer to that date. It's time to fish or cut bait. And if countries want to avoid these tariffs, let's sit down and talk. So if we can get China done and India done, these are significant positives. And I underscore that with an article I just read this morning, which talked about some of the Goldman Sachs information that gets released, and that with all this uncertainty, hey, even when we're sitting in the retail space, the institutional guys are in the same mode right now.
Absolutely.
And everybody is sitting there. And what they emphasized with how many people are not biting into this rally in U.S. equities or this subtle turning. I look for the divergence signals in currencies and I see them, nor are they biting into the currency. So the slightest positive right now is going to be a herd stampeding into the market. And I want everybody to be well aware of that. You don't have to trade today in anticipation. When it starts, it's easy to jump on board.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm with you there as we've talked about, with the uncertainty. I don't need to be the first one into the trade. I don't need to catch that knife, set the levels that you're looking at to clear. And once it clears those levels, be ready to go. For me, if I'm watching this DXY, I see this resistance here at 99.35 to 99.40. A clear break of that might give me my breakout opportunity.
That's right, Howard. And, when I talk about this, people say, oh, come on, you've been saying this. Okay, yeah, I've been saying it. I'm sticking to it. Why? Because I look for the broad base of things out there that can begin to build the case for opposite moves. I always look for the counter move as the big returns that we can get. Let's look at last week. U.S. trade deficit, $61.6 billion. In April. In March, it was $138 billion. Now, we can say, oh, that's because of all the tariffs, but what does it mean in the bigger picture? If our trade deficit is reducing, there are less people selling dollars in the marketplace. Remember, when we have a trade deficit, that means we're selling dollars out to everybody. Now, if the Europeans, do they want dollars? Do the Japanese, do the Chinese in Singapore, India, do they want the dollars that they're receiving from the U.S.? Sometimes no. In fact, most of the time, there's always a portion that gets sold back. Now, if you're reducing your trade deficit at a time when the dollar is at its lows and there are less sellers overall in the market, that's a significant factor. If and when it turns, the skids are greased already. Second, May, the Fed reduced its quantitative tightening. What is quantitative tightening? It's the first time we've ever used quantitative tightening in the history of the Fed. What does it mean? Nobody really knows what the outcome, but what it is, in simple terms, is the Fed is no longer doing $25 billion of extinguishing capital. They're now only doing $5 billion a month. They've already done, since quantitative tightening was announced, $2 trillion.
Right.
That $25 billion a month now is $5 billion a month. That means $20 billion a month is now available for the banks and the marketplace to loan, and for us and for users to begin to borrow. That's another big positive out there in the world. We know the Fed's behind the curve, but that's another positive in the easing cycle. And the third thing, I'll draw a point. Qualcomm's agreed to buy somebody for $2.4 billion, Alphaware. a London-based firm, and Meta is now in talks to buy on a multi-billion project, Scale AI. So what do we have here? We have more of movement of funds, especially in the Qualcomm, over to England. So these are all significant factors that I look at to build a base. Once the ingredient now comes in, the change can happen and the wheels will turn very quickly. So I offer my experience to the viewers. You don't trade on it right now, but be aware that while everybody's talking all the negatives, which we're all well aware of, there are a number of positives that are beginning to form in place to the marketplace.
Yep, I can't argue there. It's just a matter of how everything plays out, and does China move? Do we move forward? What ends up happening here? What's the final takeaway there is going to be a big one. And then the budget deficit. We've got things that's got to move. There is a lot of moving pieces, like you said. There is, I do believe, going to be a lot of volatility kicking in at some point. A little surprised the VIX hasn't moved at all. It's sort of getting pegged in this $17 area. Is that surprising you at all?
It's telling me, again, underscoring uncertain. Nobody wants to take a new position. And volatility cuts both ways. It cuts on the downside, which we all talk about, but volatility cuts on the upside as well.
Absolutely.
So this is why, as a technical analysis, I would view stochastics. I always look for momentum indicators, and I stress early on the divergence that I'm beginning to see in the momentum, meaning that you may be putting new lows in the dollar, but the stochastics are not making new lows, which means that something's got to give. Either the trading price is incorrect or you're about to have a strong downturn. I kind of think it's that the price is out of whack right now. And that's why I argue, still believe, I've been saying since January, end of May, June, this is when I see the big turns happening. And I believe we're on the precipice of that. So two things in currencies that can always, we look for safe havens. When the news comes out, where does everybody jump? They jump into the yen and they jump into the Swiss franc. Those are two huge safe haven plays. Now, where is the dollar yen today? 144.65. Last week it closed at 144.81. So we're just below it. A 20-point move is nothing in the currencies. In the Swiss franc, you have 82.18 approximately right now, and last week closed was 82.22. The week before was 82.28. The week before was 82.12. So Swiss franc, which is only a 0.25% interest rate, but that's a low interest rate, but it acts as a safe haven.
Right.
We always would say, when times of trouble, Switzerland would bring the dome over the top of the Alps and insulate themselves. So the Swiss franc is an attractive safe haven currency. So watch these two currencies. They're right on the precipice of last week's closes, and they are the safe haven. The other currency I'll just point out quickly is the MEX. The Mexican peso, 8.5% interest rates, and suddenly money is continuing to move back into Mexico. Well, if everything was so chaotic and if everything was so uncertain today, why would money be moving into the Mex in the midst of a trade war with the United States? So it tells me that the bigger picture is returning to normal, and the Mex people are beginning to park at 8.5% excess funds in Mexico and having less fear of a all-out trade war with Mexico. So again, these are the significant factors that the currency market can alert you to. Again, I don't emphasize jumping into trades because we are in a highly volatile session.
Absolutely.
But what I can argue is that when a piece of news comes out, you have everybody in the starting blocks. That's not only us in the retail space as I'm a retailer now, having spent 43 plus years in the institutional side. But suddenly, when you look over at the other starting block, you have all the institutional traders too. So
Right.
watch carefully, look for the good news. If we see good news out of China, US, this could be the beginning of the melting of this uncertainty in the marketplace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Besides that, what are you watching this week when it comes to do we have any Fed, not our Fed talk, but any worldwide Fed talk to keep an eye on?
This is a pause week. It's next week when the Fed, the BOJ, the Bank of England, all come out with their meetings. Right now, I'm looking at it this way: you've got an Bank of England ECB policymaker, Megan Green, on Saturday came out and said that disinflation. Remember, disinflation.
Right.
This is what all of Europe and the UK and China, remember, China just had their CPI. It dropped again, minus 0.1 on a year, minus 0.1 on a year and year. And in May, 0.2. China slipping rapidly down the hole of deflation.
Right.
Exports to the U.S. were the lowest in 5 years. Okay, that could be expected due to the tariffs. Japanese GDP, 0% was announced today. So the Bank of England now suddenly talking about disinflation. It kind of puts you out, where is the U.S. on all this chatter? If the world is talking that we're in disinflation, and suddenly, that the ECB is saying, hey, we're at the pause, but we're watching carefully, we actually could go on the other side of 2% if inflation continues to drop, then I would be watching carefully this week for any U.S. indications that maybe the timing is getting right. I'm still out there on my call. I still think we see a 0.25% interest rate cut by the Fed next week. So I'm watching carefully the statements this week.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I'd love to see it if we could get this movement on the China trade, like you talked about, maybe a little bit of movement on the Hill, although I think we're about to see, I think this week that's not going to be good news because we're still too far away. Again, they're trying to get things done by July 4th. We all need to keep that framework in mind. That's the time frame that if it gets close to July 4th and they're still arguing and pointing fingers and nothing's moving, then we want to be concerned about it. I will point out I'm not concerned today if they're pointing fingers, arguing. That posturing should be expected out of the Hill and out of the Senate, especially where they're good at that. So I'm with you there, Mr. Flanagan. We don't have a huge amount of economic data anywhere. We don't have a huge amount of earnings. So do you think technical? I'm going to leave you with my last question of the day, and this is I usually don't ask you tough ones to end off. Is it a week where technical analysis outweighs tweet analysis, or are we just tweet analysis all the way?
It's tweet analysis all the way because that's what's going to move. However, in the absence of tweet analysis and the absence of economic releases, the technicals suddenly gain more weighting in decision making. And I've highlighted today the currency markets. Money moves first. The currency markets are beginning to ebb. And that's what I'd be watching. I'd be watching the weekly closes in the Dixie. 99.20 is my first level. We're presently just below that at 99.15. And you can watch the Canada, the yen and the Swiss as money begins to come out of safe havens and gets put back into use.
Fantastic. Again, have a great trading day, everybody. We will be back tomorrow morning, myself and BigBeat, and we've got Mr. Flanagan back on Wednesday, like always, with everything you need to know, because money does move first and no one follows it like Mr. Flanagan. We will see you all again tomorrow.